Students and colleges around Boston are asking the state for more help with financial aid. State funding was increased last year in a higher education reform bill. To talk about the financial aid and how it helps students and colleges is the president of the Association of Independent Colleges and Universities in Massachusetts, Richard Doherty. Thank you very much for being with us, Rich.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, talk about the students, because there are other forms of financial aid out there from the public sector, but talk about the students who are helped by this kind of aid.
Sure. So at both the federal and state level, students of probably from family incomes somewhere south of $60,000 a year would qualify for, at the federal level, a Pell Grant, or in Massachusetts, something called the Mass Grant program. And it's an incredibly important program that helps students be able to afford the college that is the right one for them. And I think that that's part of what we're trying to do, is to build a coalition of voices, student voices, family voices, legislators, that would support increased funding for need-based financial aid here in Massachusetts.
Well, one thing that we are definitely hearing a lot more about the past few years, whether it's from needy families or even middle-class families, it's the crushing effect of debt for education.
Yeah. And that is absolutely a challenge for families, and frankly, one way to reduce debt is to increase grant aid for students. And so that's again why we are advocating at the state level to continue the momentum that the legislature has gotten going for more need-based aid. They've increased the aid at the state level $3 million each of the last 2 years, and that's a substantial amount of money for students across the Commonwealth.
Well, talk about how much this can matter, especially for someone who comes from a needy family. They are the first generation going to college, and they see how much it's going to cost.
Right. So I think that the one thing that I think is important for an important message for first-generation students is that they become aware of what the real cost of attendance at college is. There's sort of a sticker price, and then there's the net price. And the net price takes into account all the institutional aid that a college itself may give a student, plus the federal and state grants that the student may get. And so for many students, what they might see in the catalog for a college can be reduced by half or even less, depending on the student's need. So in many cases, which surprises people, a very expensive sticker-priced private college, when you factor in all the aid that a needy student might get, can be more affordable or as affordable as a public institution. And I think that families sort of don't necessarily understand that. And I think that that's an important contribution that the independent colleges in Massachusetts bring to the table.
So in other words, they're doing something to help with that information gap?
Yes, and actually there's been legislation that has, I think that was one of the things that has been identified as something that needs even more work. And so individual schools certainly go out and tell that story to high school students at college nights, etc. But I think that there's an appreciation and included in a new bill that's been introduced up at the State House, emphasis on financial literacy for college.
What is the effect on students? I mean, just even hearing generally how expensive it can be to go to college, because I know stories even in my own family. People get accepted into colleges they really wanted to go to, and then they say, no, that costs too much. I'm going to some place where it's cheaper.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that it's important that students go to college because there's and it's also important that they go to the college that's sort of right for them. I think there's a lot of talk about fit as it relates to college. So you don't want to go to a college that may be less expensive, but just not the right environment for you to learn in. And I think that surprisingly, there's so much aid that is out there and available to students that students should make sure they have a diversity of institutions that they apply to and get and consider. And there's actually a new tool out there for families and students to use called a net cost calculator that's available on every single college's website. And you can go in and you can just plug in your family's numbers and get a pretty good idea of how much financial aid you might get and what the real cost of attending that particular school might be. And I'd urge families to start doing that, you know, even in 10th grade and 11th grade, not to wait till their senior year, so that they have an idea of what type of schools they might be able to shoot for.
Well, this year, going back to State House, a tougher budget environment, and you know, we're not just talking about students, we're talking about the colleges and universities involved, and I think the broad perception here is that they're doing okay, so you're asking for money, and people in the state legislature might say, I'm not sure I can prioritize that as much this time around.
Yeah, I actually think that the legislators understand that the money is really going straight to the students, so it's helping students and families. It's not you know, really going to the institutions directly. And I also think that there's an understanding and a greater understanding of the amount that the colleges themselves are doing. The colleges stepped up to the plate, I think, in a very big way in 2008 and 2009 when the economy went south, and have kept up that commitment of financial aid. I mean, just you know, this past year, the private colleges in Massachusetts awarded $560 million in aid just to Massachusetts residents. And the 20 or so colleges that have campuses in Boston awarded some $190 million of that 560 to Massachusetts residents. So I think that there is a partnership between the colleges, you know, the state government and the federal government to try to make college affordable.
A lot of our viewers might guess that the state's pretty generous when it comes to financial aid for college students, but is it?
So surprisingly, no, they're not. Massachusetts has one of the lowest average grants in the country, beating out Arkansas as the only other state with a lower average grant. So that is a surprise. Some of that is a function of our having a spike in recent years in the number of students applying and qualifying for the Mass grant. You know, there are states that I would consider competitor states, both economically and from an education perspective, California, New York, New Jersey, which offer an average grant that is somewhere between 4 and 9 times what the average grant that we offer here is.
Well, we just have a little more time. The financial aid applications have to be wrapped up by the end of March. So any place you'd recommend that people should go to if they want more help?
Sure. So there's a so it's the free application to federal student loan, for federal student aid. And it's FAFSA.org. That's an excellent first place to stop. Our own state agency, MIFA, MIFA.org, also has a terrific website that can help students and families plan for college and get information on learning to afford college.
All right. Thank you very much for being with us.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Richard Doherty, and we'll have more news in just a moment.